Welcome to this Operoo training video. This training video is all about how to set up a trip planning e-form with approval workflows and approval stage triggers. For the video, I'm using my demo account. Within my demo account, it is all demo data. If you have any questions at all about this functionality or any functionality of Operoo, you can contact our support team. On the bottom right-hand side of every Operoo page, there is a live chat facility. Clicking on that icon, you can start a conversation with one of our support team agents. Also on the top right-hand side of your account under help, if you were to click FAQs, this would take you to our knowledge base where there are hundreds of articles on how to complete specific tasks within Operoo. Clicking on support will also show you the other ways you can contact our support team, such as via email or over the phone. Let's close out of that. So what we're going to do firstly is we're going to create our staff form. Now, to do that, I'm just going to click into staff just to show you a few examples of all the staff forms that I have in my demo account. So I've got a bullying form, I've got a risk assessment, a clinic visit log, cover form, purchase order, loads of different forms that schools may use. So within Operoo, you can create any form, any staff form that is required. Just as a high level note, before you create your trip forms or any form with an approval workflow, you will need to have your approving groups set up on the left-hand side. So over on the left under groups, I've got a couple of approving groups. I've got admin, facilities, head teacher, office team, SLT, a test one, and an EVC group. If you're not familiar with creating groups, there is a training video that goes into depth on how you can create groups. So check out that training video. It will be a static group that you will be creating for your approval groups. To create my form, let's start that. Clicking add form and add staff form because it is a staff form. I'm going to start from a blank form. You can have a look as well. You can have a look at the Operoo best practice staff e-form templates. You may find that there's one or two templates there that you would like to start with, but today I'm going to start from a blank form. The form type I'm going to use is a self-service form. What that means is it's a form that will sit in the staff member's account until they need to use it, and it can be completed more than one time. So they can complete 6, 10, it doesn't really matter, however many of those forms as is required. Clicking on self-service form, I'm just going to give it a title. Just for tests, this is where you would call your form, whatever you choose to call it. This is where you'd put a description of that. I'm not going to put a lot of questions on this. I'm just going to put a few basic questions on it. So proposed location, start date. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come up here and just put day. This is going to be a day trip planning form, so not a residential. I'm going to put is lunch required, just in case the catering team needs to provide lunch. Yes, no question. I think that's all I'm going to put for now, just as an example. So the proposed location, the date of the trip, and if lunch is required. So any other questions that you require, you'll just click on the question type as I did and populate that question. If you would like more information on the different question types, there is also a training video that goes through that information. So check out that video. Coming down, clicking save. The next page I'm taken to is my members. This is who is going to have access to that form. I'm going to make it a dynamic form. So clicking dynamic members and choose filter. I previously have created a teaching staff group. So I'm going to make this form accessible to my teaching staff, of which I have 15 staff members within that group. Clicking confirm, clicking save and next. This is where I come into my approvals. So as I mentioned at the start, you need to have your approval groups already set up, and they will be static member groups. So once you've got those set up, all I need to do now is create my approval workflow. I'm going to have 3 stages in my example today. I'm going to start with EVC, then I'm going to go to finance, and then I'm going to go to head teacher. Firstly, I'm going to click add stage. So the first one is going to be my EVC approval. The approval stage name that you put in this field here is what is seen by the staff member when they are submitting the form. So whatever you choose to put in there, it's your choice entirely. Then I'm going to select my approving group, of which I'm going to select my EVC group. The next option down, notify submitter when this approval stage is completed, which is this option here I'm just highlighting. For every approval, it's hard-coded into Operoo that once the entire form has been approved, the staff member who submitted that form will receive an email letting them know that that entire form has been approved. What you can do if you choose to is by selecting this option here, you're saying that you would like Operoo to send an email when the EVC stage has been completed. So if my form only had one approval stage, for example, and it was approved by the EVC, the staff member who submitted the form would receive 2 emails. One telling them the EVC approval stage has been approved, and also letting them know the entire form has been approved. Further down, the next option we have is allow submitter to select approvers from the approval group. This one here that I'm highlighting. What that means is if you had multiple staff members within one of your approval groups, so looking at my EVC again, if I had 4 staff members within my EVC and I selected this option, when it comes to submitting the form, the staff member who's submitting the form can select the staff member of those 4 who is going to receive the approval. If you don't select this option, an email would be sent to all 4 staff members because they're all part of the EVC group, and whoever picked up that approval first would have completed the approval, and the other 3 staff members do not need to do anything. So when building your approval workflows, it's up to you how you choose to set it up. So for EVC, I am going to allow the staff member to select from the approval group. I'm not going to allow them to select more than one approver, and you can put in notes. So for example, I know it's an obvious note, but please select the right person. That's my first stage done. So it's EVC approval. The group is my EVC group. The staff member will receive an email when the stage has been approved by the EVC, and they can select out of that group who is going to approve their form. When it comes to the next stage, all I need to do is click Add Stage. From here, I'm going to go for my finance approval. Put approval after that. Coming down, I need to select my finance group. So here's my finance group. And these 2 options are the same. Notify submitter when this approval stage is completed, and allow submitter to select approvers from the approving group. Now, I'm not going to select this one now, so you can see the difference between the 2 of them. But you may have noticed that I have one extra option, and it's also up the top here as well. When you are setting up your workflows, you can choose how you want that flow to go. For example, if I selected EVC approval now, the finance team would not see that approval request until it's been approved by the EVC. If I didn't select that, as soon as the form was submitted, an email would go to EVC approval and the finance approval, and it doesn't matter in which order that form is approved in. For now, I'm going to keep it in order. So it's going to go EVC approval, and only when it's been approved by the EVC, it's then going to go to finance for approval. So that's my second stage done. I wanted to add a third stage. So coming in, click Add Stage, you have the same fields. So for this one, I might just do SLT approval. Coming down, selecting my SLT group, and then I am going to only have SLT see it once it has been approved by EVC and finance. Coming down finally, we'll do that one, why not? And then clicking Save. So clicking back into my approvals, these are my 3 approval stages. So for the first one, I have EVC approval. The staff member will be notified when that stage has been approved, and they can select of the group of approvers in the EVC group who is going to approve their form. Next down, we then have finance approval. The staff member cannot select who is going to receive that approval, and I'll select that one because I've selected it on all of the others. And then lastly, we have SLT approval. So SLT is not going to see that form until it's been approved by the EVC and finance, and the staff member cannot select in the SLT group, I should say, who is going to approve their form. Excuse me. Clicking save, that's our approval done. The next thing we have are the settings of the forms. So access restrictions is your roles. If you're not familiar with roles, have a look at our knowledge base on setting up roles. Basically, you can restrict access to certain administrators if you do not want them to have access to e-form responses. Enabling the form is making it live. I'm going to enable it now just for ease. You can add a category if you have one. I'm going to put mine under staff trip approval forms. Sticking it under here, staff trip approval forms, selecting that. If you're not familiar with categories, you can either have a look at one of our knowledge base articles on categories, or there is a training video that goes into the settings of your Operoo account where categories are mentioned in that video as well. Coming down, I'm going to glance over these settings for now and clicking save and next. Then we come into triggers. So triggers are one of my favorite functionalities of Operoo. What it does, it just allows you to complete your approval workflow, and it will just all run automatically in the background and you don't need to do anything. There is, I should say, there is a knowledge base article on triggers. So if you are unfamiliar with if you are unfamiliar with triggers and you would like some help, you can contact the support team, or you can have a look at that knowledge base article. Every form that you create has question triggers. So that is a trigger that will activate once the form has been submitted. But whenever you set up an approval workflow, you also have approval stage triggers, which is where I want to spend most of my example now. So clicking approval stage triggers, I can set up various triggers. So for your trip planning workflow, a couple of triggers that you might choose to set up. Once the trip planning form has been approved, sending a trigger to the staff member who completed or submitted that form, asking them to then complete the risk assessment associated to that form. So that can be an automatic trigger that has been set up and just happens in the background. Another trigger that you might like to set up is if a stage has been rejected. So for example, we have EVC, Finance and SLT. If Finance reject that approval stage, you might choose to set up an email trigger that goes to the EVC. Just letting them know that Finance has rejected it, they rejected the submission and the reasons why. So they know that that's no longer going through and they may see that form coming back around to them for approval again. The last one I'm going to look at today and that you may choose to set up is if lunch is required, which is why I added the question, is lunch required? So you could choose to set up an email to your catering team that if they need to provide lunch, they know that information as well. And that's an email that automatically goes to them. When it comes to your triggers, regardless of whether it's an approval stage trigger or a question trigger, you can have as many as you like. It's unlimited. You don't have to stop at 5. If you have 10 triggers that are useful, build all of your 10 triggers. To create a trigger, you need to choose a rule. So what is going to activate the trigger? In this case, I'm going to say all approval stages approved. So that's when it's gone through EVC, Finance, and SLT approval. Then choose an action to execute. I'm going to create my risk assessment trigger first. So for this, I'm going to request a self-service form to be completed. You need to have previously created your self-service form, of which I have done. If you get to this stage and you have not created your form, just save the form, go back out, create your risk assessment form, and then come back into this form and complete the trigger. Choosing my sub action to execute, I would like the self-service form to be completed by the staff member who submitted this form. And then finally, what form is it? And I do have my risk assessment form. There we go. Risk assessment, day, group, school year. It's a bit out of date, but it's fine. And you can put in a note here, whatever you choose to put. Let's copy this here. Form has been approved. Please now complete. Apologies for the spelling. The risk assessment. The other reason outside of the automatic setting up of your workflow, why I love triggers so much, is you have these response placeholders for every question. So what I can do, so I've got your day trip planning e-form. I'm going to put in 4, and then what I can do, this proposed location at response _6002, I'm going to put that in here. Has been approved. Please now complete the risk assessment. So when that is received by the staff member, it will read your day trip planning form for insert proposed location has been approved. Please now complete the risk assessment. So when they receive this follow-on email, they'll know exactly what trip they now have to complete the risk assessment for. You can add more information if you want. For now, that's fine. Then I'm going to simply click create new trigger, and that trigger's done. If you want to, you can edit that trigger by clicking on the pencil. You can view the trigger details by clicking on the eye icon. So for example, all approval stage approved, a self-service form request will be sent to the staff member. And this is the self-service form which is going, and that is the content of the email which that staff member will receive. Now, it's important to note here, self-service forms are normally standalone forms. What I mean by that is emails are not sent to the staff member or the parent asking them to complete them, and there are no reminders to do so. However, when you set up a trigger, and the trigger is to send a self-service form, an email will be sent. And also a reminder will be sent asking the staff member to complete that form if they haven't done so. You can also see the trigger activities, so how many times that trigger has been activated, for example. And lastly, of course, you can delete the trigger if it's no longer valid. So that was the first trigger that I created, sending a self-service form to the staff member who submitted the form once the entire form had been approved, asking them to complete the risk assessment associated with that trip. The next trigger I'm going to build back into my approval stage triggers is if the form has been rejected by the finance approval. So coming in here, I'm going to say rejected specific approval stage, and the rejected approval stage will be finance. Choose an action to execute is send an email, because I would like to send an email to the EVC, letting the EVC know that finance has rejected that form. Now for here, I need to send it to any address. When a form has been rejected or an approval stage has been rejected, an email is automatically sent to the staff member who submitted that form. So you don't need to set up a trigger to go to the staff member. They are automatically notified when that action takes place. So now I want to send it to any address. This is where I'd put in the EVC's address. I'm just going to put in mine for now. And then you can do the subject of the email. So trip e-form or trip form 2, and this is where the placeholders come back into play at response 6002 on, and this time I'm going to put the date in as well. So at response 3198 has been rejected in the finance approval. I'm going to copy that down to here as well. So trip form to insert proposed location on insert the date has been rejected in the finance approval. Now you can take this a step further as well. So underneath here, you have these additional placeholders. So I can, if I wanted to, put who rejected it. So at approval stage 28556 rejected by, that one there. So the form was rejected by, and that will insert this staff member who rejected it. And the reason for the rejection was, and I have some notes down here. So if finance put in any notes as to why they rejected, then you'll see what that looks like in a minute. You can put in those notes as well. So that's going to be my 28556 underscore notes. There we go. So this will read trip form to Switzerland on the 31st of December has been rejected in the finance approval. The form was rejected by Sue Smith. The reasons being the date isn't suitable. whatever those reasons may be. Once you're happy with the content of your email, clicking create new trigger again. And there we go, that triggers right up the top. So I've now got my 2 triggers so far. The other trigger that I wanted to show you was to send an email to catering if they need to provide any lunches. So clicking back into my approval stage triggers, my choose a rule would be all approval stages approved. I only want that email going out to the catering team once the form has been approved. I don't want them to even start planning about lunches that they need to provide if there is a chance that that form and trip does not go ahead. So all approval stages approved. I'm going to send an email again, and then I'm going to send an email to any address. I'll put in my address again. Go. And then here you might put catering required. Any information that will just help the catering team know what they need to do. And you might also put in the date. I want to do 4. And then my date is 3198. There we go. So here, lunch is required on that response again. Oh, wrong place, my apologies. There we go. Lunch is required on the insert date. Now, what I didn't add to my form, I didn't add information such as number of students going, what lunch is required, for example. So when you add those other questions, number of students required, and if it's sandwiches, what sandwiches are required, they would have their own placeholders. So it could come out to be lunch is required on the 30th of December for 6 students. The lunch required is six packed lunches, for example, along those lines. So when you are building your forms and you are planning to use approval stage triggers or question triggers, just bear in mind any of that information that you might like to share via email. Make sure you have that corresponding question so you can input that placeholder that is required. Just a simple one, just to show you another example, clicking create new trigger. So I now have my 3 triggers. That's done. They're all the 3 that I wanted to create as an example today. And finally, preview just shows you what the form looks like. Now from here, if you want to make any changes, jump back into any of the specific sections, make your change and click save. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump over to my staff profile because this is my administrator profile, and I am going to submit that form and show you what the approval process looks like. Now, if you have any of your staff members who are not administrators, they will just have Opera Central. So clicking in, that's now come up. So to access that form, to complete that form, I need to go to my form library, which is where all self-service forms sit. So clicking form library, coming down, these are all of my self-service forms. And here's the one here that I've just created, this day trip planning e-form test. Clicking start form. Where would we like to go? Let's go to Switzerland. And the date of the trip, well, doesn't really matter, 30th of September. Now, if you haven't seen, we now have the ability to clear questions. So if an answer was provided that wasn't accurate, that can easily be cleared. Is lunch required? Yes. And then coming down here, I have my approvals. So I can see that the first approval that is going to take place is the EVC approval. And I can see that I can select the approvers from the group. And I've got a note that's been provided for me of please select the right person. So for this, I'm going to select myself as the EVC. Then the next 2 stages, I've got finance approval and SLT, where I cannot select out of those groups who is going to receive the approval. So they're the 2 differences when you're setting up approvals. The EVC is allowing the staff member to select a member. Finance and SLT, you are not showing those staff members, and it goes to everyone within those 2 groups. Once that form has been completed, clicking submit form. Now, what that's done, as soon as that form has been submitted, that then triggers off an email to whoever is being asked to submit that form, in this case, myself. and it's populated under my approvals for Walsh Primary School. I can see here I have my day trip planning e-form submitted on the 23rd of September, and I can approve or reject that form. When I click approve or reject, it opens up into this screen. So straight away, it's a bit odd because I submitted it as well, but I can see which staff member submitted the form, the date and the time that form was submitted. I can also see all of the approvals. So I know it's going EVC, finance and SLT, and it's currently pending approval. I can see all of the answers provided. So Switzerland on the 30th September and lunch is provided. And this is where I come down and this is where I can approve or reject that form. Now this one I'm going to approve. And this is where I can put in whatever notes I choose to put in as an EVC. And if you have previously signed, it will retain your signature. If this is the first time that a staff member is approving a form, it will be blank. I'm just using my mouse now to do a scribble. You can also use your trackpad, or if you're on a phone, the screen of your phone. Once you've done your signature, clicking save. What that's now done is that's now noted the EVC stage has been approved. You'll notice that it's now disappeared from my approvals. I don't have that form anymore. I'm not part of the finance group. But before I showed you a functionality, what I wanted to show you is if I come down all the way down as a staff member, remembering I'm in my staff view, under my submissions, I have full visibility. So this trip right here, day trip planning form, 23rd of September, I can see that it's pending approval. And it's pending approval with the finance department. So as a staff member, I have full visibility of exactly where my form is within the approval process. Clicking view, this will open it up. So I can see EVC approved it on the 23rd of September at 12:21, and the notes they gave me was have fun. So when it comes to setting up your workflow and that setting of would you like to notify the submitter when this approval stage has been completed, bear in mind that the staff member has that visibility anyway when they log into Operoo. It's just up to you whether you would like to send them an email with that information as well. Now, what I wanted to show you, because I'm not part of the finance approval, I wanted to show you a functionality known as approve on behalf of. So what that means, I need to jump back over into my administrator view for that. If you have any approvers who are away, annual leave, sick leave, whatever it may be, instead of having that approval held up and not moving through the process, an administrator who has access to the form has the ability to approve on behalf of another staff member. So clicking into my form library on the left-hand side, then clicking into my form, I can see that there's been one submission. It's currently sitting with finance approval with Jamie Cooper and 6 others. So I know all the finance team is currently away. So as an administrator, I don't want to hold up that approval. So clicking the 3 lines under actions and approve on their behalf, this will open up the form and I can approve it on behalf of finance. So I can see all of the other details, when it was submitted, all of the details and so forth. I will approve this one. Any kind of information you choose to put in there. Actually, I'm going to reject this because I've got my trigger. Rejected, doesn't really matter. And then my other signature, and then clicking save. So because I've rejected that form, a couple of things have taken place. One, we can see the status here has been set to rejected. 2, an email would have gone out to the staff member who submitted the form, letting them know that the form has been rejected. And 3, there will be that email trigger that I set up to the EVC, letting the EVC know that finance have rejected that stage. So that could be the end of your workflow. Nothing else needs to take place. The form has been rejected. But what can take place and what might need to take place is that the staff member might need to resubmit the form. If that takes place, coming back into my staff view, so my Operoo Central, up to the form library, and down to my submissions, I can see now my trip here, trip planning e-form has been rejected. When I click on view, it tells me why it's been rejected, but I have an opportunity to resubmit. So if it is a scenario where the staff member does need to resubmit the form for whatever reason, clicking resubmit, it retains all the previous information that they'd previously given. So it doesn't resubmit with a blank form, and this way the staff member just has to then provide or change any of the responses. So lunch is not required anymore. Coming down, you do need to go through those approval processes again. As Operoo, we don't know whether the first approval can be overwritten or whether you need the historical original approval submission and the latest one. So there will always be two if the first one's rejected and there is another one. So coming down, clicking submit form. I now have that form back again because I selected myself. And if I come down to my submissions, I have my first one, which was rejected, and then my follow-on one, which is my new one, which has just gone through. So I do have those two versions of those forms. That's what I wanted to cover, and I will show you the emails that I have received, but I just wanted to summarize what we've looked at today. So going back to my administrator view and clicking staff, and let's find the form. You can do this via your form library as well, but we created the form, clicking the 3 lines to open it, put a few questions in. We created our approvals, remembering that you must have your approval groups created before creating your approval in your workflow. We also looked at triggers. So we created 3 triggers, which were follow-on actions to complete your workflow. One of which was an email, I'll just bring it up. One of which was an email to the staff member asking them to now submit a risk assessment form. And now what I'm going to do, that actually hasn't gone through because I rejected the form. So what I might do is I might quickly approve this form so I can show you that email as well. The next one was an email where finance rejected it and the email went back through to the EVC to let them know. And the last one was to the catering team. Then I showed you what that form looks like to a staff member submitting the form, what the approval process looks like, and the visibility that the staff member has, and also what happens if a form is rejected. So before I show you the emails, I'm just going to quickly approve all of those stages so I can show you that email as well. I'm going to do approve on behalf of. It's just the quickest way right now. So approve on their behalf. That will refresh. I'll approve on behalf of finance. I don't need any notes. And then finally, SLT, which is my last one. There we go. So that's now fully been approved. So that will then trigger off that self-service form request to complete that risk assessment. So let's have a look at that email now. So this is the email that I received as the trigger. So this is the email that I set up that once the form has been approved by all stages, it goes out to the staff member to complete the risk assessment. So we've got the form name here, Risk Assessment Day Group School Year 20 to 2021. And this is the message that I added to the trigger. Your day trip planning form for Switzerland, it has input the location of the trip, has been approved. Now please complete the risk assessment. When the staff member receives this, clicking on Respond Now. If they're not logged into Operoo, they will be taken to the login page. If you are using single sign-on, they will be then taken to the portal to sign into the portal. If they're already logged into Operoo, clicking Respond Now will take them directly to that form, which they then can complete and submit. And remembering, as it's a self-service form that has been sent as part of a trigger, if the staff member has not completed the form, we will automatically send reminders to the staff member that they need to do so as well. That's what I wanted to show you. So that was creating your initial trip proposal form with an approval workflow and approval stage triggers. And we also looked at what the view is to the staff member completing and submitting that form and what the approvals look like to those staff members who are responsible for approving any of those form submissions. If you have any questions at all, please don't forget to contact our support team, go to our knowledge base or have a look at our YouTube page where there are loads of videos on how to complete certain features and certain functionalities of Operoo. Thank you so much for your time today. Anything we can help you with, please let us know.